What do we have in store for you on this episode? Quick reminder, on the Harp On Sports Audio Media Radio Network. Get a hold of us, share, like, subscribe at Harp On Sports, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Harp On Sports, the YouTube channel, harponsports.com, new website. Almost there. Just a couple of pen strokes or brush strokes left. We're going to have that for you. And it's going to be really cool. It's going to be interactive. Going to be a lot of fun. What do we have in store for you on this edition of The Bar? Well, we've reached the college football. It's not even a quarter post. It's a third post. I count it as a quarter post because, you have conference championship games and then 4 games down, 8 to go in the regular season, plus conference championship games. So, plus a bowl game, right? So there's 15 games, but depending on how you look at it, we're not quite 16 yet. For the big dogs it is, but nonetheless, there's some things that are pretty evident. We're going to look at that. Also, I love the Ryder Cup. The Ryder Cup just finished. Enjoyed the Ryder Cup a lot, and I think football can do it. I'm going to tell you how I think football can do it. There's a version of it that football can do. I think it'd be a blast. I think it'd be extremely enjoyable. Now, would people sign up for it? I don't know. So we're going to look at that. And also, the reality bites baseball. We're in the final week of the year. Final week of the year of the Major League Baseball season. And look, could be a star-studded postseason. The Red Sox may have to go to New York to try to win a game to get into the wild card round just to get drilled by the Rays. The Dodgers, the Giants, the Cardinals coming on strong. You could have some pretty big, heavy hitters here. So why does it feel so vanilla? We're going to look at that as well. All right, let's start off with this. Football, quarter post, at least for college football. And, I wrote down some things here that I think are interesting. Some things that I didn't see coming. Everybody raise your hand who saw Clemson in the weakest conference in college football out of the college football playoff race before October 1st. That's got to be the surprise of the year, right, so far. My ACC championship game was Pitt and Clemson. I don't think Clemson's done losing yet. What are they ranked? Well, depending on what poll you look at, 25th and 1. They're outside of the top 20. That's shocking. And let's face it, they still have to play some of the better teams in the conference. So Clemson, I think Clemson's staring like at 8-4. But, you go through and you start to check some boxes. Ohio State's gotten beat. They can work their way back into it here. Of course, Texas got beat early, but I think Texas ends up being the biggest threat to Oklahoma when it's all said and done, at least in the Big 12. My Big 12 championship game was West Virginia, Oklahoma. Oklahoma had to come from behind to beat West Virginia this past weekend. I should have seen this coming. My Big 10 championship was Wisconsin and Michigan, and Michigan and Wisconsin play each other this weekend. It could be Wisconsin's third loss. So, I start to look around the landscape of where we are in college football, and I went through and, pulled the top-ranked team from conferences. Pulled the top-ranked team from the major conferences. And this is what I have right now. Your college football playoff would be Bama, Oklahoma, Oregon, and Penn State. Would you take that right now? Bama, Oklahoma, Oregon, and Penn State. Penn State's never been in it. Oregon was in the first one. Oklahoma was in it a couple years ago. What would be the oh my gosh scenario? Well, realistically at this point, from what I've seen, Florida could win the SEC. I don't really think anybody else can outside of Alabama and Georgia except Florida. Kentucky's not going to win this thing. And Arkansas is a sweet story, but they're not winning this thing either. From what I've seen so far in this year, one of 3 teams can win the SEC. Florida can win it, Georgia can win it, Alabama can win it. I think Georgia's going to win it. At the beginning of the year, I said Georgia's going to beat Alabama to win the SEC. So, by the way, my college football playoff at the beginning of the year was, good gracious, what I have, Seth. I had Georgia beating Clemson in the finals, and I have Clemson beating Alabama and Georgia. Who did I have Georgia beating? Oh, I nailed this one, didn't I? Georgia beating Ohio State. No, I think that's what I had, right? Georgia beating Oklahoma. Yeah, Georgia beating Oklahoma. Whoops. But hey, I still get 3 of the 4, maybe. But as I look at it, I like it's. I like heavy hitters. The heavy hitters are still there. You've got fresh blood that's old blood. You know, the fact that Oregon's back into the fray with their win at Ohio State. I don't know what Iowa's going to do. Iowa's got to play Maryland this weekend, so that gets rid of one of them. If Maryland win, that's kind of one of those, oh boy, what do we do? But if Iowa wins, you still have Iowa, you know, at least coming out of the west of the Big Ten. You look at the east of the Big Ten, that's where the Penn States, the Ohio States, the Michigans are. So that's going to devour itself, just like the SEC West and the SEC East, depending on what have you. The Big 12, these things all devour themselves when it's all said and done. I do look at one matchup this weekend as being pivotal, especially if Cincinnati wins. If Notre Dame wins, Notre Dame's got to go to Virginia Tech next weekend. Notre Dame's still got to play Southern Cal. Notre Dame has some landmines and some grenades that they got to be careful of. If Cincinnati wins, at Notre Dame's going to be their toughest game of the year by far. They're not going to have anything left, and right now they're ranked 8th. So the difference between this Cincinnati team and other non-Power 5 teams in the past, or group of 5 teams when it comes to making the playoff, is they've always started down like at 12. They started down at 14. UCF had to work their way all the way up there. Plus, Cincinnati has a little bit more cachet and a little bit more respect. Plus, last year, look at what type of year they had. And they lost to Georgia, who's undefeated this year. If you're going to look back and say, well, Georgia, how loaded they were last year, and it propelled them to this year, Cincinnati looks around and says, hey, look what we just did. They don't have to crush Notre Dame. If Cincinnati beats Notre Dame, I don't see them losing. Which creates an interesting scenario when you start dealing with, should a second SEC team get in? Should a one-loss Big 12 team get in over a Cincinnati? And truth be told, if that one-loss team is like a Baylor, they're not going to get in over Cincinnati. If the one-loss team is a Texas, they will get in over Cincinnati. Politics matter. Family name matters. That's why every Bush that's ever run has been elected to office. Family names matter. They do. But I think you have to be happy with what you've seen so far in the college football season, don't you? At least from what I've seen. I mean, your 2 leading Heisman Trophy candidates play each other this weekend. Is Matt Corral going to win it? He's got some pretty gaudy numbers. He beats Alabama in Tuscaloosa. He skyrockets to the top. I don't know if we see enough in terms of Oregon on prime time to get anything out of them. They got the biggest win of the year in college football under their belt, don't they, going to Ohio State? But overall, like I said, the quarter post, I think it's been a pretty impressive start. I do. And you've got to have enjoyed, at least I've enjoyed what I've seen so far. And, you know, we're going to start to get into these separation Saturdays. It's why I don't worry too much about what happens if this team wins this and this team wins this and this team knocks off this team. That's why I don't worry about that stuff too much, because it all takes care of itself. But the problem that college football is going to have is if Cincinnati wins. If Notre Dame wins, you may not like Notre Dame and say it's unfair. What are they, 47-5, like the last 4 years? And it's funny, like that 47-5. I think it was 47-5, right? One of those losses is to Clemson in the playoff. The other loss is to Clemson in the ACC title game. The other loss is to Alabama in the college football semifinal. One of the losses is to Michigan, and I can't remember who the other loss is to. It's like the last 4 years, that's who they've lost to. It's pretty good, isn't it? It's pretty impressive. Had a pretty good run. I can't remember for the life of me who the other loss is to. But, you know, with what they have on the schedule, they're better defensively than they've been. And let's face it, as of right now, I mean, I think Georgia's the best team in the country. I think Georgia's the best team in the country. The second best team in the country from what I've seen is probably Alabama. Third best team in the country from what I've seen, at least at this point, for what they've done and how they've done it. I mean, let's face it, Penn State went to Wisconsin and won, and Penn State beat Auburn at home. Does anybody have two better wins than that? I mean, Florida, talking about the best win in the country. Oregon going to Ohio State. I think Alabama's got the second best win in the country going into Florida and winning. So, again, it's a good, solid start to the year. And you really want a zoo on your hands? Never going to happen. Never going to happen. But if you really want some fun, have Ole Miss dump Alabama and have Arkansas dump Georgia this weekend. There. You want to see SEC people? Oh, look, and Florida's got to go to Kentucky. None of those aren't going to happen, right? You may get one of them. And the one that would probably be the most likely would be Kentucky beating Florida. The one I see the least likeliness of happening is Georgia and Arkansas. They're waiting for that. All right, so I think Arkansas is a good story, but I remember Kentucky a couple years ago where Kentucky was loaded. I think they went 9-3, but they had Georgia at home, and if they beat them, they were going to win the SEC East. Everybody's fired up, and Georgia had like 21-0 in the second quarter. I've seen this movie before. I know, I've got it memorized. So there's that. Something else in football that grabbed my attention. And it had nothing to do with football, it had to do with golf. I love the Ryder Cup. I thought the Ryder Cup was great. We won, set a record, 19 points or whatever we ended up out of 28. Ryder Cup is something we usually get drilled in. We didn't. We won. We won for the third time in 20 years, I think it was, right? 21 years. I would love to see a version of this because I'm always trying to think of what creative things that we can do that can capture our attention in other sports. And I talk about Team USA and how our pride for Team USA is dead. We don't have pride for Team USA anymore. We don't. What do we have pride for Team USA in? We had people openly rooting against Americans in the Olympics. I've said it once. I've said it 100 times. People love America but hate Americans. Our fellow Americans, at least. I would love to see Team USA versus the world in football. Is there enough quote-unquote talent in the world to deck out I don't know. You'd need probably at least 45 guys, wouldn't you? What would that look like? What would practice look like? Would it only be one game? How much money would be involved? See, that's the tricky thing about football is after you play a 16-game regular season, and think about a guy like Tom Brady who plays 18, 19 games every year in the NFL. Like Patrick Mahomes, these guys have played 20, 18, 19 games. They really going to want to go compete on that stage? Where would you play it at? It's just a great opportunity. And I was sitting here thinking, okay, do you have guys that could do it? And I went through and looked. I counted as of right now. We're not quite there yet. We're not quite there yet. I counted what? No, America Samoan. I know it's a different country and technically not, but I counted 22 non-American players that have been on rosters in the NFL the last 3 years, 22. Now, that's a far cry from us versus the world, right? Right now, that thing's got a lot of 70-0 looking written all over it. But, we talked about making American football an Olympic sport. It would never work. It just wouldn't. American football is an Olympic sport. It would never work. You couldn't play enough games. But a Ryder Cup type of setting where it's Team USA versus the world in football, that could work. How far are we away from that? 10 years? Canada. We keep playing games in London. We talked about the NFL making the announcement a month ago that each of its 32 franchises can seek an overseas or an international city to partner with. It's just going to grow the game more and more. And if you're thinking about, okay, you got an 8-year-old right now, the age of 18, what does that development look like? It usually takes about a decade. Think about what we did in the Olympics and basketball in 92 compared to how the world's caught up with us now. That's 30 years later. I don't think it takes quite that long now with everything going on, but we're always talking about American football, how great it is, and we should have football in the Olympics. Will never work, but I think an Olympic or a Ryder Cup type of event, Team USA versus the world in football would be great. Now, you're going to get guys to sign up for it? I don't know. You have trouble getting guys to sign up for the Olympics right now. This is going to be cool. I think it would be cool to see the United States of America versus the world in London in football. And don't tell me one game. Oh, one game. You got to do more than one game. You got to do more than one game. Oh, come on. No, you don't. You really don't. Let's see here. I want to pivot to one more thing. And that's baseball's regular season coming to an end. You know, the Rays are going to win 100 games. I should be just ecstatic. Ecstatic. Why? Well, look, you have the Giants and the Dodgers heading down the stretch and just, I mean, these two teams are loaded and they're probably going to play each other in the NLCS. I really have a hard time trying to find somebody that's going to outflank or outnavigate one of those two. But the Cardinals and what they've done the last 2 weeks, and you look around the league and even what the Brewers have done and throughout the course of the year, and some of these teams that grabbed our attention to the point where now there's really nothing special about the regular season anymore. And I know that's one of those things that everybody talks about the NFL, and there's nothing special about the regular season in the NFL. It's all for fantasy games, right? But nothing special. Calvin Johnson, really quick, I dare you to get within 100 yards of what his NFL single season, yardage record is. And by the way, now that there's a 17th game, get ready for records just get destroyed. Nobody's going to care. Derrick Henry probably pass Eric Dickerson, single season rushing. Yeah, whatever. Tom Brady's going to pass Drew Brees this weekend in New England. All-time passing leader. Yeah, whatever. Baseball. The thing about baseball is the regular season, as boring and as dull as it was and is at times, it gave you historic markers to hit throughout the course of the year. It was a big deal. I remember, and just even like with perfect games, remember all the perfect games and no-hitters we had at the beginning of the year? I remember watching El Presidente, Dennis Martinez, throw a perfect game for the Expos when I was a kid. I thought that was really cool. Nolan Ryan's no-hitters, or Nolan Ryan getting to 300 wins. I remember when Donnie Sutton got to 300 wins. I remember when Mike Schmidt hit his 500th home run. I remember when Reggie Jackson hit his 500th home run. Those were big, big things. Marquee things. And then you got into the, late 90s and early 2000s, and not like him, don't like him, doesn't really matter. I mean, Roger Clemens got to 300 wins. Greg Maddux, Tom Glavine, Randy Johnson. You guys 300 wins and 3,000 hits, and this is awesome. Remember Derek Jeter 10 years ago getting to 3,000 hits and hitting a home run to do it. These cool, great milestones. I'm sitting around and looking at things right now. 100 wins was a big deal in baseball. Not anymore. 20 game winners. The Dodgers may have one. Think about that. The Dodgers may have a 20-game winner, and it's not Kershaw or Scherzer. We're going to have maybe one 20-game winner in baseball, maybe one. So no 20-game winners. Nobody's going to have 250 strikeouts as a pitcher. The bench used to be 300. No 20-game winners. What records? What milestones? I mean, nobody's ever going to track down Barry Bonds. 300 wins? Who's going to do that? I mean, Max Scherzer got his 3,000th strikeout, and what's funny is more people have 3,000 hits. The 3,000 strikeout club is more exclusive, right, than 300 or than 3,000 hits. More people have gotten 3,000 hits and 3,000 strikeouts. We're like, Baseball used to hang its hat on these great milestones, and now it's like, whatever. We don't have those anymore. And whether it was Cal Ripken Jr., I'm going up and down the list now. I remember it was a big deal when I was a kid, and Cecil Fielder hit 50 home runs. When anybody in Major League Baseball had 50 home runs like 13 years, he did it. Oh my gosh, this is so cool. We don't have anything like that anymore. The days are done. So I think we can have a cool postseason, and I'll do my predictions probably on Friday's show. As of right now, As of right now, I'm leaning Giants, Rays, I think right now is what I'm leaning towards. But I'm sure my senses will get the best of me when I look at betting against Scherzer and was it Kershaw, who may be the third wheel behind Urias and those guys. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Kershaw may be the fourth guy in that rotation in the postseason. But it's just one of these things like, oh my gosh, okay, the baseball season's wrapping up. Oh, nobody's going to hit 350. Okay, Triple Crown. Okay, guys are hitting 47 home runs, driving 113 runs. Okay, nobody's closing on any save records. There's just nothing. There used to be, at least every year, there used to be something that, okay, somebody got 3,000 hits. Somebody got 500 home runs. And I'm sure if I went back there and found something, Miguel Cabrera hit his 500th home run. There we go. Something. Those used to be gigantic deals. They're just not anymore. Baseball's benchmarks. Reality bites baseball, and the reality is those things just aren't important. Records and statistical records just aren't important anymore. They're not. Baseball had all these hallowed records, and they bastardized them during the PD era, and football doesn't care. And basketball, do they care? I mean, I remember one of the big, holiest stats of all time was Oscar Robertson averaging a triple-double for a year. What Russell Westbrook did, you're like, whatever. It's like, okay. I cringe to think what happens in 2 years. I'm sure it'll be a gigantic deal. It better be a big deal. When LeBron breaks Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's all-time NBA scoring record, football will continue to break its records because passing has gotten so prevalent. Nobody's ever going to top Emmitt Smith in rushing. It kind of sad. It's one of the things I look at all of these baseball, and you got all these big name teams in there again this year, and what could happen. And I look around and I'm like, man, does baseball have anything special anymore? Not a big deal. Harp on Sports, I know, really jolly way to end this, huh? Harp on Sports, the Bar Podcast, Audio, Media, Radio Network, at Harp on Sports, Twitter, at Harp on Sports, Instagram, Harp on Sports, the Facebook page, Harp on Sports YouTube channel, harponsports.com. Almost have that thing ready to roll for you here, getting into the final stages, having that thing locked in for you. So there we go. How about that? I'm going to have my baseball postseason predictions. Hopefully Friday we'll have an idea where everybody sits and what's going to happen, and we will go from there. So there you go. Oh, by the way, I should have brought it up during the college football thing. Florida State's 0-4. Fans wanted Willie Taggart gone after 13 games. What did he go, 5-7? Then he lost to Boise State, and they wanted him gone. Mike Norvell just completed his 13th game. He's 0-4. That team will win maybe a game or two. It'll be interesting to see if he doesn't make a bowl game next year, what they decide. This is the truth. I cannot think of a team that has fallen off a cliff quicker than Florida State in college football in my life. I can't. 5 years ago, Florida State was a national title contender. 4 years ago, to start the season, Florida State and Alabama played in a top 5 matchup in which some people thought Florida State could win. Now they may go 0-12. Nebraska fell off the table in college football. I cannot think of any team in the history of this sport that fell into the trench quicker than this one. It's pretty sad. So, Mike Norvell, I don't think it matters who. I don't think it matters who's there. If you're the president of a sewage plant, you still deal with shit all day. All right, here we go. Harp on Sports. Remember, stay clean, stay focused, stay strong. Frankenstein. Have fun with your friends.